Dr. Ethan Kane had seen a lot of strange cases during his 15 years as a xenobiological specialist, but nothing had prepared him for the Zelathi diplomat currently collapsing in his office doorway at 3 in the morning. Ambassador Lissa Velthorin was one of the most respected diplomatic figures in the galaxy, known for her composure, her brilliant negotiation skills, and her ability to maintain perfect poise under even the most intense political pressure. The Zelathi people prided themselves on emotional control, on the discipline that came from centuries of cultural refinement. The woman clutching his doorframe, her purple skin flushed with fever, her blonde hair disheveled, and her violet eyes wild with something that looked like panic, bore no resemblance to the composed ambassador he'd met at official functions. "Dr. Kane," she gasped, her voice rough. "Please, I can't. It's getting worse." Ethan was at her side immediately, his medical training overriding his shock. He caught her as she swayed, guiding her to the examination chair in his private office, the one he maintained for sensitive cases that couldn't go through normal medical channels. "What's getting worse?" he asked, already scanning her with his handheld medical tricorder. "Ambassador, what are your symptoms?" "Everything." Lissa's hands were shaking as she gripped the armrests. "I can't think clearly. My body temperature keeps spiking. I can't focus on anything for more than a few minutes. I feel like I'm losing control of myself." The tricorder readings made Ethan's eyebrows rise. Elevated heart rate, increased blood pressure, hormonal levels that were completely off the charts for Zelathi physiology. But there were no signs of infection, no toxic substances, no obvious pathology. "How long have you been experiencing these symptoms?" "3 days, maybe 4. It's hard to track time when I can barely." Lissa stopped, closing her eyes. When she opened them again, they fixed on Ethan with an intensity that made him take an involuntary step back. "I need you to cure me, now, before I do something that destroys my career, my reputation, everything I've built." "Ambassador, I need more information. Have you been exposed to any unusual substances, eaten anything unfamiliar, been in contact with—" "It's you," she interrupted, her voice cracking. "You're the exposure. You're what's making this worse." Ethan stared at her. "I don't understand." Lissa laughed, the sound edged with hysteria. "Neither did I not at first. I thought I was just tired from the summit. Then I thought maybe I was developing some kind of illness. It took me 2 days to realize that every time I see you, it gets worse. Every time I'm in the same room as you, my symptoms intensify. Every time I even think about you." She cut herself off, breathing hard. Understanding hit Ethan like a physical blow. "Oh no. Oh yes." Lissa's expression was a mix of misery and desperation. "I've developed Zelathi bonding syndrome. For you, a human, and it's progressing so rapidly that I can barely function." Ethan's mind raced through everything he knew about Zelathi bonding syndrome, a rare condition where a Zelathi individual became physiologically attracted to another person with an intensity that bordered on medical crisis. It happened occasionally between Zelathi individuals, usually resulting in traditional pair bonding. But cross-species bonding syndrome was almost unheard of, documented in only a handful of cases across the entire medical literature, and it was notoriously difficult to treat. "Sit down," Lissa said suddenly. "Please, you're too close and I can't. I need you to sit down over there so I can think clearly enough to explain." Ethan moved to his desk chair, putting distance between them. He watched as Lissa visibly relaxed slightly, though her hands were still trembling. "Better." he asked gently. Marginally. She took a shuddering breath. I need you to understand what's happening. Zelathi bonding syndrome occurs when our biology recognizes someone as a perfect genetic and psychological match. It's supposed to be rare, selective, a sign of true compatibility. But when it triggers, it's not gentle, it's overwhelming. I know the basic pathology, Ethan said carefully. Hormonal cascade, neurological rewiring, physiological dependency. The afflicted individual becomes increasingly focused on the bonding target, experiences physical discomfort when separated, loses the ability to regulate their emotional responses, all of which I am experiencing in accelerating intensity. Lissa's voice was tight. 3 days ago, you were an interesting human doctor I'd met at a few diplomatic functions. Someone I enjoyed talking to. That was all. Then something shifted. Maybe it was that conversation we had about interspecies medical ethics. Maybe it was watching you be so gentle with that injured child at the cultural exchange. I don't know what triggered it, but now I can barely be in the same building as you without my entire physiology going haywire. Ethan processed this, trying to maintain clinical detachment while his heart hammered in his chest. The standard treatment protocol is separation. Distance between the affected individual and the bonding target usually allows the symptoms to resolve over several weeks. I tried that. Lissa's laugh was bitter. I left Earth for 2 days, went to our embassy station thinking distance would help. Instead, the symptoms got worse. Separation anxiety so severe I couldn't sleep, physical pain, difficulty breathing. I lasted 36 hours before I had to come back. That's unusual. Separation should decrease symptoms, not intensify them. Should being the operative word. But according to my own medical scans, my body has already begun the full bonding cascade. It's not just attraction anymore, Dr. Kane. My physiology is literally rewiring itself around you. And the more I try to fight it, the worse it gets. Ethan stood, pacing, his mind running through treatment options. There are medications that can suppress the hormonal cascade. Neurological inhibitors that can dampen the psychological fixation. We could try. Stop! Lissa's voice cracked with desperation. Please stop. Every time you move, every time you speak, it makes it worse. Your voice, your presence, even your scent, my body responds to all of it. I came here because you're a xenobiological specialist. You're the best there is at treating interspecies medical conditions. But I'm beginning to think there's no cure for this. There's always a cure. But even as Ethan said it, he was searching his memory for cases like this. The few documented instances of cross-species bonding syndrome had all resolved either through completion of the bonding process or through such severe interventions that they left permanent damage to the afflicted individual's neurological systems. Neither option was acceptable. I can't complete the bond, Lissa said, as if reading his thoughts. Even if you felt the same way, which I'm not assuming you do, I'm a high-level diplomat. Cross-species relationships at my level require approval from the Zelathi Council. The political complications alone would take months to navigate, and I don't have months. At the rate this is progressing, I'll be non-functional within a week. What about the neurological dampening protocols? Tried them. They barely made a dent, and the side effects were almost worse than the symptoms. Lissa was gripping the armrest so hard her knuckles had turned pale purple. I'm running out of options, Dr. Kane. I came here because I'm desperate. Please, I'm begging you. Find a way to cure me before this destroys everything I've worked for." Ethan looked at her, really looked at her. Beneath the desperation and fear, he saw intelligence, strength, and a fierce determination to maintain control. He also saw something else. Pain, real, physical pain from fighting against her own biology. "There might be another option," he said slowly, "but you're not going to like it. Tell me." Zelathi bonding syndrome is based on neurological recognition patterns. Your brain has identified me as a bonding target and is releasing cascading hormones to facilitate pair bonding. Fighting it makes it worse because resistance triggers stress responses that amplify the hormonal cascade. "I know all this," Lissa said impatiently. "But what if we don't fight it? What if we let the initial cascade complete, but control the environment to prevent full bonding?" Lissa stared at him. "You want to trigger the bond intentionally, not complete it, just satisfy the immediate biological imperative enough to give us time to develop a real treatment. If we can get past the acute phase, your body might stabilize enough for neurological interventions to work." "That's insane. You're suggesting controlled exposure to the very thing that's making me lose my mind." "I'm suggesting we work with your biology instead of against it." Ethan pulled up research files on his terminal. "There's precedent. In the few documented cases where bonding syndrome was successfully treated without permanent damage, the approach was gradual exposure coupled with neurological retraining. We acknowledge the attraction. We allow limited contact in controlled circumstances, but we establish boundaries that prevent full bonding." "Limited contact," Lissa repeated, her voice strained. "What does that mean?" "It means we spend time together, supervised, structured time where I help your body acclimate to my presence without triggering the full bonding response. We start with short sessions, 15 minutes maybe, and gradually increase as you build tolerance." "You make it sound like exposure therapy for allergies." "Essentially, that's what it is. We're retraining your neurological response patterns." Lissa was silent for a long moment, her violet eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made his skin prickle. "And what happens if it doesn't work? What happens if spending time with you just makes the bonding cascade stronger instead of teaching my body to regulate it?" "Then we'll try something else." "But Ambassador, doing nothing isn't an option. You're deteriorating rapidly. We need to try something." "I can't believe I'm considering this." But Lissa's expression suggested she was already convinced. "How would it even work? We start now, tonight. Controlled exposure in this office where I can monitor your vitals and stop immediately if things get worse." Ethan moved back to her side, pulling up a chair but maintaining careful distance. "We talk, just talk, normal conversation while I track your physiological responses. We see if your body can learn to be near me without going into crisis. And if I lose control, then I'll sedate you and we'll try the aggressive neurological protocols. But I don't think it will come to that." Ethan met her eyes. "You're one of the strongest people I've ever met, Ambassador. You didn't become a high-level diplomat by being unable to master yourself. We're going to use that strength. We're going to teach your body that it can be near me without surrendering control." Lissa closed her eyes, breathing deeply. When she opened them, there was resignation there, but also a flicker of hope. "All right, we try it your way, but Dr. Kane, if at any point I say stop, you stop immediately. No questions, no hesitation, because if this gets worse, I don't trust what I might do." "Understood." Ethan activated his medical monitors, attaching sensors to Lissa's wrist and temple. "Heart rate is already elevated. Adrenaline and oxytocin levels are climbing. Let's establish a baseline. He sat down across from her, maintaining about 2 meters of distance. Tell me about your last diplomatic mission. Before all this started, what were you working on? Lissa blinked, clearly thrown by the mundane question. Trade negotiations between the Zelathi Confederation and the Andromedan Alliance, tariff structures and resource-sharing agreements. Sounds thrilling. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. It was actually fascinating. The Andromedans have a completely different approach to resource valuation based on their species' energy requirements. Finding common ground required rethinking fundamental economic assumptions. Tell me more? Ethan watched his monitors. Her heart rate was starting to stabilize slightly. The simple act of focusing on something else, engaging her diplomatic mind, was helping. They talked for 20 minutes. Ethan asked questions about her work, her interests, her favorite Earth locations. Lissa answered, gradually relaxing, her responses becoming less strained. The monitors showed improvement, not dramatic, but measurable. How do you feel? Ethan asked when the first session timer chimed. Less like I'm dying, Lissa admitted. Still uncomfortable, still acutely aware of you, but not as overwhelming. That's progress. Ethan made notes in his medical file. We'll do this again tomorrow. Same time, slightly longer session. We'll build up gradually. Dr. Kane, Lissa's voice was soft. Thank you for not dismissing this, for taking it seriously. Of course, you came to me for help. It's what I do. It's more than that. She stood carefully, testing her stability. Most doctors would have insisted on aggressive treatment or mandatory separation. You're actually listening to what my body needs. Sometimes the best medicine is working with biology instead of against it. As Ethan walked Lissa to the door, maintaining careful distance, he wondered what he'd gotten himself into. Treating bonding syndrome through controlled exposure was risky, unprecedented, and completely outside established protocols. But as he watched Lissa walk away with more steadiness than she'd had when she arrived, he knew it was the right approach. They would do this carefully, methodically, professionally. They would teach her body that attraction didn't have to mean loss of control. They would find a way through this that preserved her career, her dignity, and her autonomy. Even if it meant spending hours in close proximity to a woman whose biology was screaming that he was her perfect match. Even if it meant ignoring the fact that his own heart rate had been elevated throughout their entire conversation. Even if it meant pretending he hadn't felt something shift in his chest when she'd looked at him with those desperate, hopeful eyes and asked him to save her. This was going to be complicated. But Ethan had never backed down from a complicated case in his life. He wasn't about to start now.